Hello and welcome to the Venus Project Supporter Show. I am Tom Hockney.
And I am Aiden Fry.
And we are the 2 points of contact for the Venus Project based in the UK. So check out our Facebook page or email us directly if you want to chat. All links in the box below.
Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right. Welcome everyone and welcome to the Venus Project supporter show. I'm Aiden Fry and Tom Hockney's combing his hair. And we've also got David here with us.
Hello.
Hey guys, we all good this week?
Good, Jez. How's it going?
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. I'm not going to elaborate. All right, yeah, sufficient.
That's good. Well, I've been on holiday, so I'm happy. All right, so this week, what are we doing? We are doing religion. So there's a video on which we're going to play for you in a second. It is on YouTube later if you want to go and watch it. It's an excerpt of Jacques from the old 70s and 80s lecture series. You'll be able to find all the discs on the website in their completeness. They do cost a little bit of money. However, on YouTube there is a ton of excerpts, so get cracking and have a look. There's a lot of good stuff. So yeah, the video we're watching today is called The God Story, and it's just 10 minutes, so we'll catch you after the break.
God says, love thine enemy. When a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. When he pulls out your eye, say, it's all right, brother. You're Christ. Now here on earth, he creates this earth and he doesn't like it at all. And he creates floods and rains of snakes and all that. The most unforgiving son of a bitch that ever lived. There's no such person. It's made up by man. Now why did man make up the God story? That's the whole thing. Who made it up? Once there was a fat son of a bitch, a mean one, that owned thousands of acres. And he owned it because his father took it away from somebody else. And he had thousands of people living on those acres. And he said to these people, I was put here to rule over you. My God, see? And this guy lived in a great big house, castle, lots of rooms, thousands of them. And he said to the little people down in the valley, the greatest thing you can do is raise pigs and cows and bring me your finest wine and women. This guy had hundreds of wives. And he said God appointed him to rule over them. Now, he also found that a lot of his lamps were taken away. He had brass lamps and things outside of his building. And these little people used to steal things. So he appointed big, husky guys called guards. And they used to stand outside the place and keep the little people away. And one day, something interesting happened. A very little guy came up to see him. He said, I can keep these little people away from your castle, and you won't have to feed all those guys. He said, how do you do that? He said, watch. He took 2 clear glasses with what looked like water, he mixed them together, and it turned black. I said, that was terrific. Now watch, he took some fire and put it in his mouth. He said, I'm going down these little people, and I'm a magic man. I come from the one on high. And he did a couple of magic, put his hands in fire, put fire in his mouth, all kinds of trickery. And the little people said, he must have power. Then he said, there's a guy up there, and if you steal, nobody's around, in the middle of the night, that guy, he can see you. If you're down in a cave, he can see you. So if you take something, you get a toothache, that's because you didn't behave right. And he scared the shit out of these people. And he built a building called a church. And in that building, it says, thou shalt not steal. And the only one that has anything worth stealing is this guy. And he conditioned all the little people not to take anything that doesn't belong to you. Where did this guy get the castle? Now these people used to kill each other and fight with each other all the time. So they went to church, and the church said, don't fight with your wife. Once you get married, don't fight. Don't fuck around with Jennifer. You're married to Louise. Don't do anything wrong, see? Because if you had a lot of little houses in the kingdom, and this guy was screwing this guy's wife, and this guy's wife was screwing that, they'd be fighting all the time. So they made them borrow law. Okay? But this guy, King Solomon, in the Bible, had 1,000 wives. There's nothing wrong with that. King Solomon. See? But the schmuckery down here gets 1 wife. But if you're rich, you had 3 wives. So, what this guy did that owned the castle is he had these guys singing his song. And all you little people went to church, and they thought it was terribly wrong to steal. But they got tired. They go to church. They said, Jesus Christ, it didn't rain for 6 months. I'm starving. The plants aren't growing. A lot of bad things are happening. And they said, if there's a God, why do these bad things happen? And the priest said to these little people that you too will all live in a big castle and have a big house. And they said, when? So after you kick the bucket. When you die and they bury you, you go to heaven. There's no rent, no taxes, no jobs. You don't even sing. You play the harp. You walk through the country. Everybody is an angel. Oh, how are you? Happy to see you. No deception. Here? No. There. After you kick the bucket. And all these little people worked real hard. And they gave a little bit of their income to the church. I mean, sure, they couldn't leave the village. And the village paid them exactly a living wage, so they couldn't pack up and leave. You give them a bag of rice a day and a glass of water, and they can't afford to leave. And then, when this king had trouble with another king, he said, God called upon me to tell you to go to war to kill those bastards because they're no good. They all got black hair. We have red hair. So you kill the black-haired people because they believe in another God, which is the phony God, the devil. Right? And all these assholes went to war. And when they came back, he said, don't kill each other. He did it. Okay? So, the moral law is not real. It's made by man. God doesn't hang a pecker on a guy. So you make it go up like that before he's married. After he gets married, the pecker doesn't go up. It goes up all the time. No Bible written. It just starts true, and after you get married, God wouldn't hang a pecker on you before you got married. You understand what I mean? The gods that men make are so stupid. They are really insane. Let me show you how insane they are. There was another ignoramus that people admire called Moses. Long white beard, very ignorant man. He climbed a mountain one day, and the higher you climb on a mountain, the less air. And the less air, a tendency toward elation and high feeling occurs, sort of spiritual things. And he saw a burning bush, which we call St. Elmo's fire today. It's an electrostatic joy. And he looked at this burning bush, which is, I am he that is. And God said to Moses, you go down to this Pharaoh and you tell him to set your people free. And Moses thought that was a good idea. And the poor bastard climbed down the mountain and walked all the way over, and he talked to the Pharaoh. And he said, let my people go. And the Pharaoh said, no. And you know what Moses did? He went back up to the mountain, and he said to God, God could hear him in the valley too. But he climbed up this mountain. He was so dumb. God, if you were in a submarine or in a cave 1,000 miles, you don't have to climb up on a mountain. But this ignoramus climbed the mountain, and he said no. He says, well, God said, you go right back and you tell him that if he doesn't set your people free, it's going to rain blood and snakes and frogs. Moses said, that's terrific. And he went back and he said to the Pharaoh, you going to let my people? And he made it rain snakes and frogs and all that. Then he said to the Pharaoh, now you going to let him go? Back up the mountain again. He said no. And God said, the firstborn will die for every Egyptian if he doesn't let the people go. And Moses thought that was a terrific idea, and he went back and he told the Pharaoh said no. The poor bastard went back up the mountain. It took Moses a long time. And he said to God, why, after all these rains of blood and all that shit, why didn't the Pharaoh set the people free? And do you know what God said to him? Not according to me, according to the Bible. God said, the Pharaoh didn't set them free because I hardened his heart. First, the asshole says to Moses, go ahead and tell him if he doesn't do that. He was insane. So now, Jesus said, when a man strikes you, turn the other cheek. Love thine enemy. You know what I mean? If a guy comes in and murders your mother, help him. Do the best you can. But when Jesus came into the temple and he saw the money changers, he didn't say, all right, you boys have to leave. We don't have any business transaction in the temple. He threw all his hit him with sticks and he chased him out. What an asshole. What contradictions. And when people read their Bible, they don't see any of that. Isn't that amazing? They don't see any of that. Now, Satan was once an angel. His name was Lucifer. He was God's right-hand angel, according to the Bible, not me. Okay? And one day, Lucifer, I don't know whether he smoked or not, but he was sitting around, he was looking at God, sitting up there on the throne, and he says, I'd like that, because in the Bible it's to try to better yourself. Make something of yourself. Don't just stay at your particular position. So Lucifer said, geez, it'd be a nice thing, if I can get that seat up there, trying to better himself. And God said, what are you trying to do there? You son of a bitch. And he said, from now on, you're going to hell. He said, gee, what am I going to do there? God makes law. He said, you will be known as the tempter. You don't walk over to a married guy and say, why don't you fuck around with Jim's wife? Have a ball, you know? That's what the tempter is. The tempter is a person who goes around saying, hey, your boss got a lot of money on the drawer and he leaves at night. Why don't you take it? Say, who made the tempter? God. Then he made man so dumb and so ignorant. See? This kind of God, in other words, if you have a child, I don't know this, but I think you try to make her or him smarter than you are, if you had the ability to raise him, wouldn't you? Not dumb enough. God made man so dumb that he's made a graveyard of half the earth. He's destroyed things. Man invented the torture chambers, the rack, the gas chambers. Done that? And man thinks he's God's divine creation. And he thinks that God likes to be worshipped. So you sit down, you lie on the floor, and you say, you're terrific, God. You're magnificent. You're wonderful. And he puffs on his cigar and says, how about a little more? See, they make God that kind of person. Whereas Jesus, on the other hand, he went around washing the feet of his disciples. But he went around all day and did hard work. He didn't come in and say, all right, boys, I'm God's son. Shine my shoes, clean my feet, and scratch my back. He cleaned their feet. And there were 4 beds around. He'd lie on a stone and sleep. He said, no, you take it. But all these phony Christians today with their palaces and gold temples and shiny books and the fancy hat of the Pope, silk and gold, all Antichrist. Your whole fucking society is utterly corrupt. There's nothing to do with God. And the God that they wrote about was also a jerk, because it was made by man. It was a dumb God. If Jesus came back, or if there were a God, he'd look at the earth and get the hell out of here. Terrible place. It's a terrible place because most things people believe in aren't true.
Okay. Welcome back, guys. So yeah, we just watched that video. I really like it. It's part of a longer talk from Jacques about religion. Maybe comes off a little bit harsh, but we'll go over it, I think, now. So David, do you maybe have a point or like a question from that video to kick us off?
I think my initial thing is that people will find it a bit harsh, especially those that are still practicing their faith. But he makes some good points, and he does it very directly and simply, and he doesn't go out to offend people. And I think people need to approach it with an open mind, certainly. That's a big thing to listening to Jacques, because he does make some bold statements that some people find a bit too much.
Yeah. Is it with this whole series?
I think
Sorry, Tom, go on.
I think I was going to say what you were about to say. Like, it's worth noting Jacques adjusts the way he talks and his mannerisms, etc., to his audience. And I think this series was filmed with like in front of 4 people or something, and the audience themselves were already prone to scientific method of thinking, etc. So he was much more direct and didn't have to cover basics of scientific processes of thinking before covering this kind of topic. Whereas when speaking publicly, he adjusts his speech and is often just trying to appeal to the most people possible, kind of thing. Yeah, it's harder to gauge your audience in public.
There is another video which we nearly played instead, which was to a public audience, and it was a lot kind of more accessible probably. I found it a little bit funnier as well. But again, these 70s discs, they don't get around that much, and there's a lot of detailed information in there. So I think it was really good to go into that, I think, for the show. So yeah, hopefully we haven't insulted half of our listeners straight away. And if you were insulted, please stick around, because we're going to try and make it up to you. Because it's not all about bashing religion. It really isn't. Jacques was just trying to explain how religion has come into being and the role that it has taken in the past, from a kind of objective standpoint, or at least from his standpoint. But then it's not to say that everyone who believes in religion is a bad person or anything like that. It's completely not like that. People grow up, and if you grow up in a religious household, then you're more likely to lead a religious life later on. Whereas I myself, my parents weren't particularly religious, so we went to church on Christmas Eve because my mum liked singing, and that was about it. And then for some other families, though, it's a bit kind of harder. It can kind of split families apart, religion.
Yeah, there was a story not that long ago in America. The 13-year-old girl who was evicted because she said she didn't believe and she was an atheist, and instead of accepting her because she was their daughter, they kicked her out. And that's really harsh. That's just because somebody doesn't believe what you believe, especially your own child, and that's part of the division, and that not only affects the child and the family, but that also may affect her ability then to make relationships with other people in the future. And that's just a small knock-on effect of that one thing there. That's not a massively widespread thing, I don't think, here in England, but it does seem to be in America, which is a very extremist Christian country in some respects, or statistically as well, not just some.
Parts of it, yeah. Then again, here we've had our past with religious kind of sectarian type stuff, all kind of before my time really. But the IRA and all that kind of stuff, and Scotland and Dublin and Northern Ireland, it pits people against each other.
It goes back to what's the story, doesn't it? Where these people are against us. God says they're the enemy, and it's ridiculous when Christians are supposed to be united underneath Christ, but they all divide each other. They say they follow Jesus, so should they all get along, but they don't. They divide. There's so many sects of Christianity, never mind other religions that have several different ways of doing it as well, and they're not united under their common beliefs. They divide themselves under it, which is not good either. But yes, there are good people out there trying, but it's the organised religion, I think, is the important thing. When people organise, especially with the Catholic Church, it's well, you've got to look at the stories that come out and the injustice, and the more the stories come out, the more it becomes clear that they never really cared in the first place, the people in power anyway. Christopher Hitchens is a good person to listen to that. He brings up some interesting stories, and I had a little watch actually before this show. I don't think we should stand by, though. I know people have got to right to religion, but we should stand up and say something, because it is affecting our society quite badly. Yeah, sorry, continue.
I think the biggest kind of, not flaw, but the worst thing that's ever happened to religion is the manipulation by the state, in that playing on people's insecurities and people's want to believe in something, or people's values, and using that, manipulating religious text and values for their own benefit. Like the amount of contradiction a lot of people, say Christians, for example, the amount of contradiction they have with what they read in the Bible compared to like other Christians that read exactly the same Bible, but are based in different states and have been manipulated in different ways. It's massive. So I think at its core, a lot of religion isn't. Sorry?
It's just in war. It's the way they use war to get people to go to war and justify it, and kill other human beings.
Yeah.
Well, is that?
It's like a mechanism. Well, at least I think it was used as one.
Yeah.
But I think kind of money and the economy has become the new religion, and cultural norms and cultural values and like fashion, for example, and these expectations and these norms have become the new religion because they're arbitrary values and they propagate a system and they're beneficial to people in power. So I see similarities in anything that's basically that doesn't follow a scientific principle and benefits the state. They seem to me to be mechanisms. Yeah.
They all seem to work together. That's the way I see it anyway. It's my personal view. They all have a different role that does have control over people, and people follow it. I find it quite funny. I know it's going a little bit off topic, but in the council, in the comments box, it was customer comments, but we don't get a choice in it. And that's different to religion because you do have your own free will, but people are brought up in it. I mean, I'm on the opposite side as Aiden, and so being brought up in the church, I see it from a very different viewpoint, especially when you talk to some people who weren't brought up in a Christian home. They find it hard to see because they weren't brought up around it. I didn't really see the other side of life. Somebody who was brought up without religion for a long time until I was in my my teenage years. It's a very different kind of life. You are isolated in some respects. I don't know. That's my part of my view. But let's move on to an actual topic if you want. So
Well, I think maybe looking at the kind of the religious type of thinking, um, and maybe an area of improvement, if I could say that, is the well, I think the religion kind of does quite a lot is absolutes, and it does forevermores, and it does, things are unchangeable. It brings that into like things of people are good, people are bad. It has this whole absolutes thing, really categorical thinking, trying to split people down. That's why there's all these different types of churches, because they want to categorize themselves in their own little sects and all that kind of stuff. It's a part of human thinking to start thinking in absolutes. It's a part of all this stuff, and if religion can kind of try and get past that, and I think I don't know. I don't know too much about like other types of spirituality and this kind of new agey type stuff, but like that to me seems to be the next kind of recurrence of religion, as in it kind of takes some of the aspects, but it's trying to remove some of the like absolutes of think people are evil, people are good, your energy, like that kind of alignment stuff. I'm still not behind all that, but it seems to be an improvement.
it's an improvement, but I'm still skeptical of it. But
Yeah.
I think looking at yourself, thinking, am I doing what's true to me first? Because if you go against your own nature, it has a conflict. It causes conflict in yourself. I know, because I've certainly been through it. I'm sure most people have. But if you lose your own focus on what you're doing, then your life, if you're not focusing on you, and I think that's where religion detracts. It says pray to a God, and for help, when you should be doing what you can to improve your situation and help your friends and family first. I think that's got to be something. And just the simple fact of not hurting, deliberately setting out to hurt somebody, if it happens and you realise you apologise, yes, but it's totally different to actually setting out to hurt someone. And I think if there is a sin in the world, that's one of the very few of them.
There was a study that I heard about in a lecture by someone I can't remember, and at first the study I thought it was like not groundbreaking, but I thought it was really interesting, and it was that there were 2,000 patients, terminally ill patients at a hospital, and for 1,000 of them the pictures were taken, and the devout Christians, no, it was just religious people of different religions. I'm not sure if it was just Christians. I'm not entirely sure. But basically, these people were told to pray for 1,000 terminally ill patients, and then the other 1,000 had no prayers. And they measured the results, and there was absolutely no difference in recovery rates between the 1,000 that were prayed for and the 1,000 that were. And to a scientist, that says that in that instance, the praying did nothing. But the problem is with that, showing that evidence to someone who believes that praying works and is healing energy or something, it won't necessarily change their opinion, because their opinions are logically based in the first place. And that's the fundamental. That's how the disease of religion, as some people see it, and I think I see it, is overcome. And it's with education. And it comes back to people's methods of thinking, the way people view reality in itself, like a deterministic point of view, for example, that changes your entire perception of reality. So if people can be taught scientific method of thinking and given tools to question their religious values, etc., then it may lead to them being able to find contradictions in religious beliefs and texts. Because so what it basically comes down to, what it boils down to, is the faith-based method of thinking and the scientific-based method of thinking, and the pros and cons of both. Now, as you may have guessed, I'm for the scientific method of thinking over the faith-based one, because it's much more predictable, and that's what I want in a method of thinking. I want to predict my environment and therefore better manipulate my environment and survive and be more accurate. Whereas the faith-based one is, if a bird crows in the morning, I've been told by my parents that means that X will happen. It's based on these arbitrary occurrences that have no grounding in anything that you can measure. So I think that's what it boils down to, those two kind of methods of thinking, and that one we can argue and we can talk about objectively, whereas the other is arbitrary and therefore has huge detrimental consequences if, well, I mean, it's easy to not use it correctly, etc., because you may be told that a black person's less valuable than a white, or, you know, something like that. And that's not really measurable. I mean, of course, it's measurable, like genetics, etc. But then there have been studies into those realms and found nothing of the sort. But even then, the thing is, with a faith-based belief system, you don't need a measurement. You can just believe it. And I think that's like the groundwork of where I stand on religion, basically.
It looks like, to me, like the evolution and development of human kind of civilizations seems to be improving our understanding of causality. And like, you start off with the moon was up and the cow died, therefore the moon killed the cow. So you end up with gods everywhere because you see causality in anything. And then you kind of slowly refine it, and then like it kind of gets refined down to some of the major religions we have today that were all kicked off, 1,000 to 2,000 years ago, really. Like, all with very bloody pasts, but providing cornerstones, right, where people can unite and combine to create bigger, kind of like a group kind of effort. It helped to start creating nations, all this kind of stuff, which provided for people in their communities better than the earlier systems, because that's all they had. But now we're slowly evolving out of that again. We're going up into the scientific way of understanding causality and understanding the universe, which you can kind of summarize it as the mechanistic point of view of things are caused by the universe. And that is not completely out of line with God, I think, with the idea of an omnipresent, omnipotent God. Like, to a kind of abstract degree, if you know what I mean. Like, well, things are caused, and God God created the universe, so anything that happens within the universe is caused, and that causes things to happen.
Yeah, but according to the Christians, God is everything. And if you take that in a literal sense and take out the God that they perceive, I don't believe in a God like the Christians and Muslims people do, but I believe something exists. But I don't think it has a direct consciousness in the way we think. It's a collection that more towards like the American Indians, what they believed in. That we were the collection of our ancestors. But I don't know. I'd say more I'm agnostic on the subject. But if we're everything, then God is the universe, and we are the universe. We're all part of it. We're all made up of the same molecules and little bits that make up the formulas, just in different formulas that make up all the different types of life. I think we're everything, and I think that has some reasonable thought to it, even if we can't properly prove it.
Yeah, that's kind of the kind of way I go down. Sorry, yeah, Tom.
I was going to say, despite adopting the scientific method of thinking, not only does religion enforce on us a faith-based method of thinking, but so does our culture now. Like I kind of touched on earlier, I think our culture and our economy has become this machine of faith-based values. An example of this would be the value of free will. So there are a lot of people in scientific fields and of scientific mind that believe in something called free will, which is our ability to decide and choose our behaviors. Whereas if one was to study in relevant areas or even just think about it philosophically, whilst understanding the deterministic nature of our universe, they would conclude that it seems impossible to exist, except a lot of people accept it to be truth. And there are many other misconceptions like this that are propagated in our culture. That includes, the media, so television, and our justice system, and the basis of our economy, in that it's reward and punishment system. And you should be proud of what you do, and you should be ashamed. Sorry?
Our whole system is based on faith. It's all based on the faith that a pound is worth a pound, and that is worth a loaf of bread, roughly. Although it's not anymore, it's more like £1.50. But It's all based on faith. Money isn't even backed up by any resource at all anymore. It's not even gold standard. It's all faith. The economy, this is all I learned when I did A-level economics, is it's all faith. It's all what people expect next year. Which is why if the Bank of England comes out and says, oh, the rate of inflation for last year was 2%, it will be 2% next year. They push inflation. They don't measure it accurately. We should actually be in deflationary period. That's a whole other thing. I will probably not go into that. But what I mean is, like, the economy is based on this expectation. And, if you say inflation's 2%, it will be 2% next year because people want to put their prices up. Any excuse.
Well, I'd like to move on from that with something Richard Dawkins said, which I think is very important. Because the safety of children must be paramount as a society, that they have a healthy upbringing. But he said there is no such thing as a Christian or Muslim child, only a child of religious parents. Well, that's the way that it should be. And raising a child, the child is vulnerable. If you tell them something, or you force them into it, or do it because you're your parents, they have nobody else they can call on for help. Say, I don't agree with this. Their parents are the sole authority in that child's life, and they're making it do something that it doesn't understand. It doesn't really understand why it should do it. It doesn't want to do it. It wants to be a kid. And I think that's important for people to realise. You can't just enforce these things. They're not just religion. Your way of thinking. There are parents that I've seen it. Live their lives that they missed out on when they were kids or younger. They wanted to be a great sports person or musician, and they force them into it, and it turns them against them as well in some cases.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wish that we had someone of like religious or faith here right now, because I'm adamant in the position that religion is a disease.
Yeah.
And it's a disease in the mind because it restricts people. It has very, very little benefits. If I don't think it has any benefit that can't be found elsewhere with another practice. So a lot of people go to the community side of it and security, but community spirit and security can be achieved without having a faith-based, thought process, which is much more detrimental. And especially, I mean, okay, so then there's the individual level. How it affects people's thinking and how it limits people's potential, because you can't believe certain things when you have a faith-based, when you like stuck to a religion. But then there's the fact that we use it in so many levels of our societal development that we still haven't adopted a scientific method of thinking and practice applied to our society. We still use faith, and I think where I live, I'm lucky to know that most people I'll talk to, maybe 50% actually, but most my age, will be much more towards the scientific method of thinking. So on an individual level, as a society, the place that I live in, has adopted this, but our society as a whole is still decades behind, centuries behind, still using faith-based practices.
Yeah, it comes down to like generational stuff, I kind of believe. We're kind of, the people who really have power now are old, because it takes time to get to that position. Like, well, maybe not all of them, but the fair chunk will be fairly old. And this is the way of societies. You kind of have the elders who push back, and you have the young guys who are like pushing forward, trying to get you there. Because you have the new kind of exciting energy and all the young stuff, and the old guys have more experience, tend to be more conservative. I'm using guys here, but really it's guys and girls. But you know what I mean. You kind of get that. And this is, again, kind of off track, but on this thing of getting us maybe out of the faith base into more towards scientific method of thinking as a society, where does drastic life elongation come in? Because the medicine is getting there soon. And if society is based on basically old people having to die off before new ideas can really come through, if people could suddenly start living to 150, like, what does that kind of like, is I see a possibility of a real drag on change, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm all for the technology, but the application in this society just seems like we don't need more people. We need more, like, intelligent resource management. We don't need to have more resources spent on old people or just people in general.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah, I
trying to
think
get
we
the guy that sorry. I was going to say the guy that
sorry.
inspired me to believing that religion is a disease is a guy called Dr. Peter Boghossian. Boghossian. Yeah, and he does really good talks, and he's well worth checking out.
Well, with the amount of back when religion was more dominant, especially the Catholic Church, you know, the whole thing about not using contraception. I mean, why? I don't get that. You were really willingly just wanting to encourage more pregnancy and more children. Why? There's a lot of conspiracy out there. I don't like conspiracy too much anymore. But why is the increasing rates in pregnancy as well? People are encouraging these ideals and false hopes through God, and there's so much misdirection. And people, I think religion is a big part of it. But why? I think they've withdrawn it recently, if I remember correctly, didn't they? About condoms, or they're thinking about it. What right has religion got to say about whether you decide to not have a child or not? You know, if you can't afford the child, I think if God existed, he wouldn't want you to have the child and bring it up into a future where you can't provide for it. That's irresponsible. You know, being a parent is about responsibility, and so by not encouraging condom use, they're encouraging irresponsibility. And I think if God really existed in the form they believe in, he wouldn't want irresponsibility amongst his children.
Well, religion and this kind of idea has been practiced around the world, and there's lots of different factors tend to be where cultures come from. Say, for instance, in Africa, it's a fairly different story to the West Country. But one thing that I could think of when you're going through that is that religion needs an enemy. They need to set up these things that are so hard that some people will break them, and they need people to demonize, so that everyone else can be inclusive and feel safe and warm. So
that makes some sense.
That's a good point.
Possibly one aspect.
And
I think it's
free will, and I think free will. Yeah.
Well,
I was going to say, and for that, obviously.
Tom.
Yeah. Am I behind like 5 seconds or something?
You are a little bit.
You're lagging a little.
Yeah. Shit.
Does anyone remember what they were saying?
Well, they do use mechanisms to keep people in the. You know, they use shame as a way to keep people repressed. You know, they. Like a little analogy, you know, if you have 10 marbles and 8 of them are red, and you put your hand in the bag enough times, you'll pick out a black ball. You know, they present natural opportunities, or they use things that they see as natural opportunities to point the finger of shame at somebody. Say, were you thinking dirty thoughts? And, you know, some people are very suggestible. You say that, and then they might have been, and they'll feel ashamed about having done something human. And then they use that to shame them and make them pray. And then they're under the submission of that person delivering the shame, not God. You know, it's a submission to them more, because I don't believe God exists in the way they do. So I don't believe God would want to do that. What parent really wants? They may have to discipline their children, but do they really want to make them to feel that bad that they're ashamed to be alive? I don't think a good parent would do that. You know, and that's people keep saying like God is the Holy Father. That doesn't sound like a Holy Father to me.
Well, I mean, all that has to work on the principle of free will, and without the idea of free will, then the idea of shame goes out the window. But like that principle of free will is still manipulated today, so people feel shameful. Some people are conditioned to feel shameful if they're not wearing the right clothes as to others. And then as a result of that, they'll go out and they'll buy the right clothes for that season or something. Or if they listen to the wrong music, or if they believe the wrong things. Especially if they believe the wrong things, then they'll adapt their beliefs and their values to those around them, because otherwise they'll feel as if, well, maybe they're wrong, or they're stupid, or they're evil, or they'll feel ashamed. And it's based on this principle of free will. So I think the conversation of religion, it's a lot of it centralized around the idea of free will and shame and good and evil. And then outside of that, the way society manipulates that today without needing religion. So a society without religion wouldn't necessarily be any better. If we reduced religion in society and culture, because we'd still have this very same mechanisms that were used by religion, used by the economy and our culture to manipulate people in exactly the same ways, but in a different context. And instead of God at the center point, it's social acceptance. Yeah,
and money and power and stance and feeling important. Everything we do when we spend money is usually, even if we don't mean it in that way, it's a status symbol of some description, isn't it? People go to a posh coffee shop and, that can be declared a status, what you wear, everything you do and the way you speak. So I think we do a lot of things that are normal and natural without thinking about it. And then therefore don't think about the other things. Like, why do you need a big fancy car? I mean, it's a bit nice, but you could do loads of stuff with that 40, 50 grand, if you really wanted to live economically. It's not living economically. We think we live in an economy, but it's a lot of the things about our society it feels so fake, and you can see it from observation.
Another thing as well, something I'd like to touch on, and I was going to say it earlier, when you mentioned why is it that they do that? Why is it that they want to restrict condom use or something? And a lot of the trouble and the frustration that comes from talking to religious people is based around the fact that often if you're against religion, you'll have a scientific method of thinking, so mechanistic, and you'll need to see evidence, and you'll need reason and logic. Whereas religious people will often follow the faith-based, and that's where the frustration comes, because you're expecting them to think in the same way as you. So it's like, well, why do you hate these people but not these people? And if they don't come up with an answer that satisfies you, if their reason is it says so in the book, then that will frustrate you. But the point is not their beliefs. Don't target necessarily their beliefs, but more their methods of thinking. And in that way, they'll question their own beliefs in time to come. Because I used to know a guy that was really heavily religious, and then he studied a lot of the scientific fields, and eventually he was the most religious person I've ever met, and eventually he overcame his religion. And that was through using reason. It wasn't someone saying you're wrong, why do you know that? It was more like, well, here are some useful tools for observing your reality. Go and question everything you believe and find out that there's no logical basis for a lot of your beliefs. So tip to someone talking, if you get frustrated talking to religious people, just remember that their thought process is completely different to yours, or maybe yours or mine, and that's where the miscommunication comes from.
And what the thing is, what you said there kind of plays into it. You said religion isn't logical, whereas logic is a way of thinking dependent on your values and culture set. And for a religious person, it is logical because you're in that that mindset already. Like, logic is not.
That's true, yeah.
Miracle.
Yeah.
I was very much like it.
It doesn't.
I was very much like that.
Word.
Certainly, I remember what it's like to be like that. You are very blind in your belief, in your faith. You would present me with evidence. Now, looking back at it, I see what they meant. I was so blind in it, I didn't listen to them. And I'm glad I'm not in that place now. And that's why I want to talk more. Like, that's why I came here, to see if we can enlighten some people. And I don't mean that in a stuck-up sense, but just it isn't helping. You know, if you want to believe something and it helps you be a better person, I don't disagree with that. But it's forcing it onto others, I think, is the biggest thing we need to push towards for the Venus Project, to push towards that you have the freedom to believe, but it's the pushing it on others that don't want it. If you want to be consenting adults and dance and sing to somebody you can't see, then do that, whatever you want. Just don't force it.
And kind of.
I think a better word for logical would be maybe rational, maybe measurable, more objective, grounding kind of thing. Just to clear that up.
I would say what we're going for is a method of thinking that correlates closer to reality. And if we can prove that, then we can. And that's the goal, I think. Because then that allows you to make expectations that are realistic. Because expectations are useful, but can get you in a lot of emotional trouble if you have wrong expectations. Or not wrong, but irrational, mate. I'm using the word now.
Inaccurate.
Yeah, inaccurate kind of expectations. I'm trying to think of one off my top of my head right now, but never mind.
Well, I think one thing religion takes away from is, like I said, the looking at yourself again. You know, and what am I doing? If it's us that creates things in this world, it's a father and a mother that go to work and look after the kids and feed the kids and bring them up, you know, and provide for them. It's you that gets yourself a job. It's only you do it. Your friends can help you, your family can help you, but it's you that does it in the end. And religion really detracts from that, and people forget to think about themselves. You know, I was told at church to give your mind and body to God, you know, to give your service to the church and God, but not do anything for myself, because that was selfish. And it's not selfish. It's just by looking after yourself, you look after others. You know, my gardening teacher, when I did my MVQ, said when you're doing health and safety, be selfish. Because if you go, I could hurt myself on that, and you move it and you make it safe, you've made it automatically safe for everybody by being selfish. And I think there are degrees of selfishness that are wrong, yeah, but there's two sides to everything. There's more than one meaning for every word, and I think we forget that.
I think maybe instead of selfishness, I like the term self-interest.
Yeah, that's probably more friendly.
Yeah, just probably for my own ego, because I think I am fairly self-interested, and this is what drives my passion for the Venus Project and a resource-based economy, because in my own selfishness, I know that I can't have a very good, peaceful life until everyone has a very good, peaceful life. Do you know what I mean? Until everyone is fed, I will always be worrying about someone breaking in to steal my food. And that kind of thing. It's a very selfish attitude, but at the same time, it needs everyone else to kind of like to be good. It's kind of altruistic but selfish.
I think you've got
at its core.
I think you've got to get the balance right.
I think that is it. It's the balance, because I'm very much like that. But then again, I know a lot of people on the other side come into the Venus Project, come into a resource-based economy not for themselves. They don't really want anything, but they want to help everyone. They want to improve everyone else's lives, and that is their main goal. They gain most from helping other people, like they gain kind of their emotional stuff from helping everyone else.
Well, yeah, I heard someone of, you know, some professional type, I forget the actual title, forgive me, but she was talking about, I think it was a lady anyway, about how we get our most emotional joy, you know, the most comfort in life from our reactions and interactions with other people and helping other people and, you know, having that human interaction. We are social animals, and I think the communities need to come back. Take religion out of communities, out of things that goods and services, you know, and remember that faith is a personal thing, and it means so many different things to everybody that you shouldn't put people in a building and tell them to conform to each other and to feel accepted that way, that they should be comfortable in their own skin. It's hard, you know, but we need to move forward that way, I think.
A big thing that religion does now is it like plays to people. It makes them feel like they're contributing, feel like they're helping others, feel like they're doing. Because you can go to church and you can pray for all the soldiers in Afghanistan, something like that, and you can feel like you're doing something altruistic, but you're not. You're really not contributing at all. Like, if you took all the churches, and for that, what is it, hour and a half every Sunday when they're on, take that, all the people in there, and between them, 3 Sundays in a row, they could make a small school. You know what I mean? Like, these people could add
people.
Yeah, you could take that emotion that takes people to church, that want to help others, that want to sacrifice yourself to help others, which is one of the kind of major kind of things behind religion, as I say, and take that into actually doing something for others, rather than paying lip.
We could do so much.
Yeah.
If we did that, we could do so much, and I think there's some good stuff in the Bible, but it is metaphors, and they've been corrupted along the way, and I think deliberately or accidentally it's been interpreted wrongly, which doesn't help as well. People have used it for their own good, so that they can propagate a lifestyle that they want for a few people.
Well,
And
these 2,000-year-old stories, they're invariably going to be interpreted, like inevitably. It's not.
Oh, yeah, of course.
There can't be anything else. You know what I mean? There isn't 3D holographic proof of a guy there wasn't a drone following Jesus around for every day of his life, so we can have like proper images. We have to use language, and like we've talked about language in other radio shows. It's so interpretable. It's impossible to keep an integrity of a story. But yeah, there's some good parts in there. There's the nice quote that I like. The Jacques says a bit, which is, "There but for the grace of God go I," which is a religious way of saying that if I was in a different environment, I could end up like that person.
It's our environment that does shape us, doesn't it? He talks about that a lot, does Jacques. But I like what he said about bringing heaven to earth and making what religions are supposed to teach, or what they say they teach, a manifestation here on earth, not just lip service. I think that's really important. Anybody who believes that there is a God and you have faith, are you living by what you believe you say, by what you say, or is it just a pretense? And that goes to everybody, atheists, people, agnostics, anybody. Are you living by what you believe and what you say you believe? Because I know I have to keep asking myself that, and I notice that sometimes I don't. But that's normal, it's part of growth. We realise, actually, there's new evidence now, or I've learned something new, and that contradicts what I thought I believed in. It's challenging ourselves, and if we don't challenge ourselves, we don't grow, and then we get stuck, and that's what religion does. It keeps people stuck in one mode of thought, and we need to break those chains.
So am I right in believing that we agree on the fact that the best way to rid or evolve away from religion in society is through education, and that would be the practice of reevaluating our values, learning to question, learning to rationalize and measure, and basically the scientific method of thinking. That seems to me to be the cure, and that the more we develop scientifically, the proportional less religion we'll have in society, because they're not compatible.
There's kind of the education route as well. I think there's also a more drastic route, which is provide for people. Figure out what problems people actually have, which drive them to church. People will go there and oh, please God, can I have enough food to get through the winter, or stuff like this. You provide for people. You don't there's the cliche of people turning to God when they're in jail. You don't throw people in jail. That's just crazy. You provide people food, help, shelter, all that kind of stuff. Then they don't have the need to go to church. You know what I mean?
Without the pretense of God to help. A lot of there is stories out there, and you could look them up online in local newspapers, and about churches that have used food drives and helping people, who come in, homeless people, and then using the situation so they can mold them into what they want and get them into the church. And then, a lot of that's just using somebody to get them into the flock to make them a cash cow, because that's what it is. You're giving your tithes. That's what I see it as. It's just, God's wise and everything, and he's dead powerful, He created the universe and everything in it in 6 days, but he needs your money, right? You know. And the people that just plainly say God's not going to heal you unless you give us some money, and it's abuse of vulnerable people.
The interesting thing with that is that somewhere down the line, people like ourselves could be accused of the same thing. Because what I'm looking down the line is that people are getting unemployed, things are getting worse and worse and worse. We need to start doing stuff like food drives, like all this kind of stuff, really reaching out to the community, helping people, and at the same time we can reach the people who are looking for alternatives. I think, you know, if we could do a soup kitchen and have like Paradise or Oblivion playing just in the background and stuff, that would be amazing. But at the same time, the people from the church will go, you know, you're trying to conform these guys to your point of view and all that kind of stuff. Education is the same. It's just it is the same as like kind of control mechanism in a way, or it can be seen like that. We're educating them our set of values, and from the Christian set of values, it won't look that good. The same as when we look at Christians trying to get people into their set of values, it doesn't look that good to us. So
I think a lot of people do have good intentions. They have good intentions. They think that's the way that people should live, that they are having a bad life because they're separate from God, and God's the divine, you know, and heals. They genuinely believe that. But there are the people who are at the top. That's when I talk about the organized religion, the people that run it, the people that know what's going on, the people that do manipulate, you know, and they do it very well, and they make it look very natural. And I don't know for everywhere, but I've seen quite a few different churches that have, you know, met people, and you can feel, as I got older and went back a few times, just out of curiosity, I could feel different atmospheres when I spoke to people, you know, and like I wasn't wanted because I'd stopped believing, and I think it was clear to them that I wasn't going to be sheep. I was just there to say hello, and I was interested. I think that maybe I don't know what they were thinking, but they certainly didn't want me there because I was an open thinker. You know, I had an open mind, and they didn't want open-mindedness.
Yeah, it's interesting. I do feel
would
like
you say
to go and reach out to these people because I feel sorry for them. I think I can start to try and understand where they're coming from. I feel like I might be able to try and start actually talking to these types of people, like in a way that could be constructive. It's just kind of getting up the courage, I guess, to go there.
It's hard when you face blind faith like that. It's hard to talk to them because it can be quite frustrating. You know, I had to walk out talking to a Christian. If there's a lot, I'm just going to leave. If you want to continue that way, I'll just leave you to it because I can't. You know, sometimes you can try, but if it's not getting anywhere, there's no point continuing.
That's it. It would be hard.
I might have to link a video at this point because the guy that I mentioned earlier that I referenced, he has a really good video called Arguing Atheism.
Oh my god!
Mom, I'm recording.
That's fine. I think I know which video you're talking about. It's the one with was it Stephen Molyneux?
Stephen.
Yeah,
and I like he's Doug. Let's not
Yeah. I'm not a massive fan of Stephen, but in this video he doesn't really speak too much as himself. He pretends to be a Christian, or he pretends to be a Christian. This discussion, it's a really good idea how to get to this. You kind of mentioned it earlier, Tom. The best thing that he did, or the most interesting thing I think, was just questioning him, so that Stephen had to do this kind of this mental juggling to try and keep this front up, this idea.
I think I'll put that in the final version of this podcast because for me it was really, really valuable information. Like I can't really explain it very good, but there's one point in the video where he puts Stephen into this trap where Stephen's role playing someone of religious background, and he does it well because he used to be of a religious background himself, and the guy puts him into this trap where he's forced to think and reassess his values. And like I burst out laughing, I like clapped or something, just sat on my computer, just started clapping because it was really beautifully done. So if you're interested in kind of like strategy on talking to people and you want to see something quite cool, then I'll put that at the end of this podcast.
I will. I don't think I've seen that. That sounds interesting.
It is a good one.
Because it is hard to break through that barrier that is created around them between being godly and worldly. That's how they put it. You know, you're of God or you're of the world. You can't be of both. That's what I was told. You know, it makes you stick in that same gear.
It's the us versus.
I mean, this guy doesn't. He says
stuff. Sorry, Sam.
Yeah, divide and conquer. I was going to say, this guy, he says one of the most important things is don't question people's rationale. So don't say it's impossible that Noah stayed inside the whale for however long it is, or the flood. It didn't happen. Here's some evidence, because they're not thinking on that same level as you. And instead, you make them contradict themselves, and you don't assess their religion, you assess their method of thinking. Like I said, but I mean, I'll edit it and put the snippet at the end. It'll be good.
Awesome. That sounds good. Well, that'll take us up to the hour then. I think roughly. Did anyone have any kind of big points that we missed?
There was one point I wanted to make, and I'm trying to remember it now. Damn it! That's always gonna. I'm trying to find. There was a note I looked at, one of my notes, and it brought up something to my mind, but now it's disappeared. We've got through quite a lot, but it's such a big topic anyway.
I think maybe to finish it off, there's just kind of the stance of, or the question of, will religion be permitted in a resource-based economy? Yes. That's about all you need to know if you're asking that. Yes. It will be completely permitted. There will be supplementary materials for people who are interested, and the kind of general idea will be that people will see through the environment the scientific method, and will slowly kind of see the positives of it.
Yeah, it's got to be a positive message. It's not about getting rid of people's beliefs. It's just about taking away organisation and people's right to believe what they want to live how they feel that they should, not be told, how to live. And that's, I think, that a big message from the Venus Project is about having that, contributing to society, but you're not forced to work for a wage that's barely livable. It's about gaining freedom and moving the human race forward, which religion isn't doing at the moment. But I think religion should be still part of it, because people are still going to want it. And I think that's fair enough.
Especially in the early transition, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
As kids grow up. You kind of see it in today, as the standards of living have got better in, say, England, like there's a bigger percentage of this younger generation that are not religious than their parents.
As education gets better and people actually start learning to think, not what to think, the more we're going to see people detaching themselves from religion, I reckon.
It's a good place to finish.
Awesome.
How to think, not what to think. So, it's been fun, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
I've been your co-host, Tom Hockney.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Right now I'm in a fry.
No, I made him fry.
Yeah. I apologize for being like 5 seconds behind on everyone. For fuck's sake.
Yeah, you'll have to excuse Tom. He's on a tape delay. Oh, great. Okay, thanks everyone for listening, and we'll catch you all in 2 weeks when we do our next show, whatever that will be.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
All right. So someone makes a claim, and they'll say, "I think God exists," or Jonah lived in the belly of a whale. The first thing you need to do is you say, "Well, how do you know that? Why do you believe that?"
I'll play the theist.
Please.
That's not hard for me.
Please.
I went to Sunday school. Okay, so I will say Jesus came down to save us, or something like that. We'll go with that.
Okay.
And you will say to me, how do I know that? Well, I say, the Bible tells me so. When I pray, God tells me so. My parents have told me so. My priests have told me so. I've been to the Holy Land. I've seen the relics. I've seen bits of the cross. I mean, that's as much evidence as there is for a quasar, and it's good. It's good for me.
That's great. That's great. So right there, the first thing you do is you put a supportive statement after that. That's great. So that is a way of modeling the behavior that you want to see. So I know that sounds simple, and you're asking, why is he spending so much time in this? But that one little thing, that's great, will help the conversation to not become adversarial. Someone's been to the Holy Land, fantastic. All right. So now we'll do it. Well, actually, as if I'm using the Socratic method on you. So I just want to clarify this myself because I'm trying to understand this. So you believe that someone lived in the belly of a whale for 3 days and 3 nights because it's in the Bible. Is that right?
Well, I mean, it's more than just it's written down.
Okay.
I mean, I'm aware that there's like interpretations and so on, but I do accept. Belief is, downgrading. But I do accept that God has divinely written or inspired people to write the truth. And back then it was the age of miracles. I understand it's not quite so much the age of miracles now, but back then I believe that I sort of believe it on 2 levels.
Okay.
I believe that it did happen physically, but I also believe that it is an essential story about faith and adherence to the glowing word of God. And so, I can sort of take either path. If it turns out to be true, fantastic. If it turns out that this was not true, then it's an allegory or a metaphor that still helps bring me closer to God.
All right, great. So let's take a look at the first one. So if it turns out to be true, so you're saying it's possible that it's not true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't think we'll ever know for sure. I mean, there's no time machine that would go back and see if there was a guy who lived in a whale.
That's true.
So I don't think we'll ever know for sure. But I certainly would not say, let's say that Jesus himself came down tomorrow and said, "Hey, man, that was just like a metaphor." I wouldn't be like, "Oh my God, the guy didn't live in the belly of a whale, and therefore there's no such thing as God." So I believe it did happen, but if it turns out that it didn't, if some magical way to find out, it would still be not a crisis of faith for me.
Okay, so you don't really have faith then that Jonas lived. Let's use Jesus walking on water. It's just much simpler. You don't really have faith that Jesus that Jesus walked on water, but you do have faith that there was a historical person named Jesus and he lived.
Yes, he was the Son of God who came down to redeem humanity from the original sin of Adam and Eve.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so are you certain that he walked on water?
I'm certain that he provided enough evidence of his divinity that people were willing to follow him unto the very gates of death and be torn apart by lions. And, whether it was exactly walking on water or whether he carried flame in his hands or whether he raised people from the dead, he provided, because there's lots of crazy people on street corners who say that they're the second coming, but he provided enough evidence for people. The Romans took him seriously. The apostles took him seriously. He created a whole 22,000 plus year religion that's still one of the greatest cultural forces the world has ever known. So something happened that was powerful enough that the people at the time genuinely believed it, and they wrote down their experiences. Are they correct down to the last T? And I don't know. I mean, there's no way to ever know for sure, but I am incredibly certain that something extraordinary happened in the ancient world.
All right, great. There seems to me to be a difference between what you said about you're not positive that Jesus walked on water, but you are positive that there was an historical Jesus.
Yes.
Huh. That's interesting to me. Okay.
Well, no, but one would be more likely. It would be more likely that there was a guy who at least people believed did miracles than, some guy walked on water. I mean, I guess that's a distinction without a difference. But so sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just curious. So what other stories in the Bible do you think may not be true? Do you think the whole thing may not be true? I guess I'm just trying to differentiate because you're 100% sure when it comes to the existence of Jesus. Are you 100% sure that the existence of that Jesus was a divine figure?
I am 100% sure that Jesus was a divine figure. Yes, I am.
Okay. But you're not 100% sure about other stories in the Bible, like Jesus walking on water. I'm just curious, just for myself, to help me understand. Could you assign that a percentage value, like that Jesus walked on water?
Yeah, I mean,
80, 70?
yeah, 80%. I mean, did he actually walk on water, or was it someone was so blown away by something that he did, and then the story changed a little bit over time? I don't know, but I'm convinced that enough miracles happened at the time that Jesus could be verified by the people who were there as some extraordinary figure with supernatural powers or greater than human powers.
Huh, that's really interesting. Now, I'm curious.
I mean, let me put it this way: if we
ahead.
want to do 100%, I'm 100% that he came back from the dead.
Right, because he'd have to have come back from the dead.
If he didn't come back from the dead, then that's a little hard to go with the eternal life thing.
Okay, so you assign, again, I don't mean to nitpick, but I'm just trying to help myself understand this. So
Sure.
You assign the value of 100% to the fact that he rose from the dead.
Yes.
So if someone were to show you the bones of Jesus, for example, that would be sufficient evidence for you to say that he was not the Son of God.
If somebody showed me the bones of Jesus?
Yes.
Well, no, because let's say that they say that he ascended to heaven,
Right.
but maybe that was his soul ascending to heaven in his human form, and his human form collapsed and maybe noticed. I mean, that to me would not
That's a good
change
point. That's a good
the
point.
equation.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, so let's go back to this. So this is me to you right now. So you can see this takes a lot of time, right? And this.
Oh, and I'm being particularly slimy.
No, that's fine.
Not slimy, but I mean I'm being particularly difficult because I'm
That's
giving
fine.
you two sort of parallel
Yeah,
tracks
that's fine. You know,
reality.
these things, and I'm happy to do this. And my first thing that I'm doing now is I'm trying to really understand why you believe what you believe. I'm trying to develop a rapport with you so that you don't think that this is an adversarial relationship. And then once I do that, I'm going to try to expose contradictions. But I can't expose any contradictions until I figure out exactly what the method of reasoning that you're using to arrive at these conclusions is. So I brought in metaphysics there about the bones. As a general rule, I don't do that, but I was just wanted to see a reaction. Okay, so let's go back to this because I find this to be an interesting conversation.
Good.
Okay, so I'm curious, what would it take for you to disbelieve that Christ was the Son of God? Like, what would that take?
Well, it couldn't take anything, Peter, that I could imagine. I mean, because we can't go back and verify the biblical.
You're correct. You're correct. We cannot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can't. I mean, and so there's nothing that could happen in the past that would occur. It's well, you know, okay. I can think of something.
Okay.
Let's say that Zeus,
right?
Zeus came back,
right,
with Jesus. And Jesus said, "I'm the son of Zeus," and the story really got a little confused over time. And you know, I don't know this Bible thing. You know, it was Zeus and his wife.
Right. I'm with you.
And so then that would be something where I'd go like, "Wow, okay, so this really did go a little bit off track."
So I just need to clarify for myself. Thanks for your patience. So you don't have faith. You believe in the basis of the evidence. So you think that the stories in the Bible are not claims, but they're sufficient to warrant belief because they constitute sufficient evidence. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean it's a two-part thing really. So I believe that something extraordinary happened 2,000 years ago in Jerusalem and Bethlehem and so on. And so because of that, I have surrendered to Jesus and love Jesus and to pray to Jesus and accept him as my Lord and Savior. And as a result of that, I feel happy, I feel free, I have a great community, I feel calmer, I feel so there's lots of empirical internal evidence of the power and happy and beauty of God's grace and faith and so on. So
great.
That's sort of so there is this sort of historical thing which I accept, but then, you know, I put it sort of into practice and found that my life was much happier and better and all of these wonderful things. And so it really is those two aspects.
All right, so I'm just trying to narrow it down for myself. So you believe in the basis of evidence. Now, I'm not talking about subjective things about how you feel once you've accepted Christ. You believe that there's objective evidence that any person can see, not only reading the Bible, but reading collaborating documents.
Yeah, and I also believe, based upon when I'm in an extremity of difficulty and I pray, I get wisdom that I
Okay. All right.
didn't know that I had, which would indicate
All right.
some
All
consciousness
right,
outside of
hold on.
myself.
Let's not go there yet. That's because I'm just trying to figure this out for myself. So,
Okay.
why is it that you think that really smart people who look at the same evidence don't come to that conclusion?
Well, because I would argue that, without wanting to speak negatively of these other people, but the first thing that I would say is, and it's a bit of a cliche, but it's a very good and true cliche, have you accepted Jesus as your Lord and Savior? So if you just look at the cold, hard evidence and say, well, okay, guys can't walk on water, therefore the whole thing is false, without looking at it as an allegory from an ancient time, a storytelling that was really attempting you to participate in the divine, then I would say, well, they haven't got the second round of empirical evidence, which is the internal experience.
Hold on there, son. Let's not get carried away. So you, and again, I'm trying to clarify this for myself. So in order for someone to look at this evidence and come to realize that from this evidence, that has warrant, it can convey warrant, one can justify one's belief that Jesus is the Son of God, that you already have to start with the belief that Jesus is the Son of God?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, my faith has grown over the years, so I would say that you can at least say, well, something extraordinary happened.
Okay, hold on. Let's stick to the original question I asked you, though. So we have a bunch of smart people who look at the same evidence as you. Why don't they come to the same conclusion?
Because they haven't opened themselves up to the possibility that it represents something divine. They've looked at it purely secular, scientifically, and they haven't opened up their hearts. I hate to put it this way, but it's true. They haven't opened their hearts up to the possibility of the divine, and therefore it can't flood in and confirm what the evidence may point to.
Fantastic. That's a great answer. Thanks. So I'm curious, have you opened up your heart to Islam?
I have not opened up my heart to Islam.
Well, that seems to be problematic. I mean, how do you know that Muhammad didn't ride to heaven in a winged horse? We have the unequivocal testimony of literally a billion people who would believe otherwise. I think that, I mean, you might benefit from opening your heart, from using the same standards that you apply to opening your heart when looking at the evidence, to opening your heart and reading the Quran. I don't understand. I don't understand. Can you explain to me why you're not a Muslim?
It's the Venus Project Supporters Show with Tom Hockney and Aiden Fry in the studio. Each week we have a guest, and they're all part of the team promoting TVP activism in the UK. We are all volunteers, and our views do not represent the Venus Project in any legal sense, but we do try to present them in an honest way. But we're still learning here, day by day. To contact the show, email england@tvpactivism.com. For information, check out www.thevenusproject.com and find us on Facebook at the Venus Project-United Kingdom. You've been listening to the Venus Project Supporter Show on UK Collapse Radio.